I don't know. Questions? No.
That was beautiful.
This is one of those things that there's so much going on that when I was an undergraduate, I took a class on philosophy of language, and the whole class was based off of one paragraph from one essay. It's a 10-week class on just one paragraph. Literally, it was just one paragraph. It was an essay called Sense and Being, Sense and Numanatum. And this is one of those quotes here where there's so much going on here that I could do, a 6-week series just on what's right here, because it means something, and it's worth getting into. This guy, Paul Tillich, he wrote a book called The Courage to Be. And it's one of those books that, I don't know, maybe you read someday. But don't be in a rush for it, because it's a very difficult book, and that's where I got this from. So the courage to be is rooted in the God who appears when God disappears, in the anxiety of doubt. So there's these, I was talking last time about these different parts of yourself, the biological part and the symbolic part. That was this class, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So this word here, first off, courage, and the type of courage that he's talking about. And then this sense of here, of to be, or being, which is the act of existing. And it flows pretty well from last time when I was talking about the sense of existence and being that... Let me ask you, what frightens you?
The dark.
The dark. Why does the dark frighten you?
Because I can't see.
Yeah, so what's in the dark?
Monsters.
Exactly.
Yeah. Whatever you put there. Yeah, we populate the unknown with our imaginations. Whatever it is that's inside of us, we put out into the world. And so the thing about darkness that scares you, and then monsters scare you. So now we can try to get to something real where we try to figure out what is it about monsters that scare us. So I guess, what is it about monsters that scares you?
Things are capable of.
So maybe it's a fear of death. And maybe that's the thing that frightens us so much about the darkness, is that I wonder how many of you have ever done that before, where you're going to sleep and the room's dark and you close your eyes and you go, I wonder if this is what it's like to die. Where you close your eyes and then your eyes shoot open and you shoot up and you're like, oh shit. You turn on the light and you grab your heart because now you're terrified that maybe this is what all of eternity is like when you die. And so there are these anxieties that we have as people. And I think that they're probably things that we generally share all across the board. One of them is that there's a fear of death, obviously. And this is, last time we were talking about, we talked a bit about this last time. And you can refer to these as existential fears. Existential means relating to existence. That we fear that at some point biologically we're going to die, and that our existence now ends. There's another type of fear that we have, which is a fear of meaning. So death and meaning that we want our lives to matter in some way. This is the kind of thing that's inevitable. There's no way we can get around this. But during this process of life, there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. There's going to be a lot of suffering, and we want our lives to matter in some way. I mean, isn't that really what's at the root of all of our relationships? We want to be connected to a person because we want to matter to that person. We want that person to matter to us. We want to matter in the world. And this is why it sounds terrible because I sound like old man Scanlon, but I worry for you guys and your generation, because I keep reading these polls and these surveys that your generation, the number one thing that you guys want is to be famous, to be known. And it's true about every individual, but we've been tracking these things for decades about what it is that young people say that they want the most in life. And the last 3 surveys I saw, the last 3 years, all put fame at the top. And you ask that question about why is it that you want to be famous? And yeah, there's things that we think go along with it. Oh, I get free stuff, but really what the essence of it, because you're not asking to be rich even, you're asking to be famous. So you're not even asking for the benefits of fame, you're asking for the thing itself, fame. And so what is that about? Well, it's really about being meaningful to people, being known. So we want to be known. And was it in this class I ever mentioned the 36 questions in this class? Yeah. You can take a look at this when you get a chance. Just Google 36 questions for falling in love. Just type 36 questions love. And there's some researchers that I believe they're out of Stanford, but I always say Stanford when I'm not sure where it came from, because a lot of psychology stuff comes out of Stanford. But anyway, these researchers, they took a group of people and paired them up randomly, literally randomly, put them in a hat and pulled their names out, and then put them at tables together, and they gave them these 36 questions. The 36 questions are broken up into 3 parts, so it's 12, 12, and 12. And each of these questions essentially is to get to know the other person. So the first question in this set is something to the effect of, if you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be? Okay, so someone tell me, who would you have dinner with if you have any historical figure? Who? Why?
He's cool.
Why is he cool?
I don't know. His music and everything. His style.
What about his style, though?
It's just cool.
We've learned some things about this person, haven't we? He doesn't have answers for anything. He's stumbling through trying to explain something, but there's probably a real reason for it. He just has difficulty articulating things. And you see, I learned a lot about this person just by asking one simple question. What kind of answer could he have given? Walks on the beach. Oh, wow, I like walks on the beach. You don't learn anything about a person that way. But I know a great deal about you right now, just from your inability to answer that question. I'm not talking shit to you. I'm just saying that struggled. No, I'm not, because a lot of us have difficulty doing that. If you're somebody who has a deep answer to something like that, and you're able to give a really detailed explanation, it means you thought about some things. If we stumble through answers, it means that we haven't thought about things, which means that you've probably never been asked that before. You've probably never thought about that kind of a thing before. And that's no surprise, but now I learned about what kind of things people think about and what kind of things people don't think about. And it's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just a thing. And then you can discover some things about yourself. But what I want you to see is that one question told me a lot more about a person than just, I like hiking. I like dogs. Whatever. Oh, I like dogs too. So the questions are designed that way, that you go through and there's like a certain level of intimacy there, which is just stuff like that. And then you ask a follow-up, like why? Why would you? And you learn about what's important to that person. And then there's a medium level of intimacy. And then at the very end, there's a deep level of intimacy. And it takes about 2 hours to go through all of these questions. And the last ones are some really deep things like finish the following sentence. So you have to look at the person and you have to finish the following sentence. At this moment, both of us are feeling fill in the blank. So now you have to take a risk. What do you say? We're both feeling awkward, ha 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 ha. Or do you say both of us are feeling interested? It takes guts to give an answer like that. But after you've worked through these questions here, you have the courage to ask a question like that or to answer a question like that. And so the very last part of it isn't a question at all. It's 5 minutes. You stop asking questions and you just look at each other for 5 minutes without saying a word. You're going to giggle, you're going to laugh, you're going to do whatever. But at the end of all of it, what they found is that these people who they paired up, 85% of them 1 year later reported still being in love and they were in relationships.
What?
Yes. So that tells you something. They were randomly paired together. That tells you that all of these questions right here, that tells us that in terms of relationships, the one thing we want is to be known. To be known, to be understood, to be accepted. Because in all of this, you're not supposed to, you don't judge them, you just answer the questions. And so it doesn't even matter if you have different interests or if you have different backgrounds. What brings people together is to be known. That's the thing we want. That's one of the things that creates meaning in life. To be accepted, to be known and to be accepted for who we are. And that's a hard thing to get to when you say things like, I like hiking, I like dogs, I like walking on the beach. These very generic, general things. You find out way more about a person. It takes about 2 hours to answer these questions if you do them properly. You find out way more about a person in 2 hours, and you become so close to a person that this eliminates years of guesswork of finding things out. And they're not superficial questions, they're difficult questions. So that tells us that there's something in our interpersonal relationships that we want that's connected to meaning, which is to be known. We want to be known by people. We want to be accepted by people as we are. But there's a certain courage it takes to put ourselves out there and to be known by people. Typically, we're afraid to say things. We're afraid to give certain answers because what if people think it's weird? the kind of answers that you give, are people going to think that they're weird? Probably. But isn't that interesting? That something is different. If you just got kind of the generic expected answers, you might be dating a psychopath. And I genuinely mean that. Because a psychopath won't have these kinds of deep answers to give. They're going to give the answers that are kind of expected. The answers that they've learned are expected to give. And so if at the end of all of this, you have kind of like bland feelings about a person, that should tip you off that there might be something going on with this person. But that would be pretty rare. But what you also might learn is that this is just a person who at this point is incapable of having deep thoughts or deep feelings. And that might be an emotionally immature person that you just don't have the time for. But again, that's only about 15% of the people who they were talking to. So now you can go find those questions. You just search it, and I think the first search that comes up is like the New York Times. There's an article. You can scroll down, copy and paste the questions, and then you can go harass your boyfriends and girlfriends with these questions. And, do you really love me? Let's find out. So there's a fear of death. There's a fear of meaning. In other words, of not having meaning and purpose in life. And then the final one that Tillich talks about in his book is, we can think about it as morality or right action. So to do the right things. And obviously, did I mention it there? Yeah, so he's a Christian existential philosopher. So obviously he has a perspective on what morality is, of what right and wrong action are. But this doesn't even necessarily depend on that. This is just kind of whatever you think it is. So there's a fear now of not living up to the standard that we set for ourselves. So there's a fear of death. Okay, nothing we can do about that. But now we have to find a meaning, because if we don't have a meaning, then there's no reason to go on. If you can find a why, you can come up with a how. In other words, if you can find a reason why you should keep going in life, then you can find a way to keep going in life. The real terror here is when you see no meaning and no purpose in your life. And if there's no meaning and there's no purpose in your life, then there's no reason to continue. But also very dangerous is this thing right here, right action. Because when you violate this principle of right action, there's a tremendous level of guilt that goes along with this. And that's a really hard thing to walk yourself back from. If you do something that you feel very, very guilty about, well, how do you now view yourself? My God, I'm not the person I thought I was. I'm a miserable piece of shit. I don't deserve I don't deserve forgiveness or redemption or atonement. So therefore, who cares what happens to me? And you fall right back into this. And then, of course, one of the ways that people will see out is a death. And not necessarily a physical death. There can be an emotional death here as well. In other words, if someone wrongs, like for example, someone who wrongs you, and your response to it is to do something terrible to them, well, now you've violated this own principle of yourself. Why are you mad at that person in the first place? Because they did the wrong thing. So now I'm going to prove to them that they're a piece of shit by doing the wrong thing myself. Now you've dragged both of you back down into this thing. And then all that does is it stains yourself. It makes it harder for you now to do the right thing in the future, because there's a level of guilt that goes along with that. Or worse yet, you can sear your own conscience. You know what it means to sear? Like with meat? Mm-hmm. Yeah, hopefully you do. If not, you don't know about steaks, and you should. Tasty. I was going to say tasty murder, but I don't really believe that, so I don't know how I was going to say it. You turn the heat up as high as possible. Get a really hot pan or barbecue, and you put the meat on, it goes tss, and what it does is it sears the outside, so that way the juices can't escape. And then you flip it over, and then you sear that side, and then you lower the temperature, so that way no juices escape. That's how you keep the steak juicy. But then the heat slowly cooks the inside, because the heat's trapped inside of the two. This makes sense. You can do the same thing with your conscience. You can behave so badly, or you can violate your own conscience to the point that now you've seared it. It's like, I've already gone this far. I've already done this before. And suddenly doing the wrong thing can just seem like Tuesday to you. It's not a big deal anymore. It's just like, oh, I'm violating my own conscience. I'm violating my own sense of right and wrong. So this gives us a meaning and a purpose. This gives us a how. So how should we live? So this one, can't escape it. It's going to happen. This one here, why should I keep going though? So despite the fact of this, why should I keep going here? And then now that I should keep going, how should I do it so that I can live in it properly? By properly, we mean in a way that we're going to be proud of, a way that we can actually brag about. Like I talk about to my students, How many of you guys want to have families someday? Want to have kids someday? Out of curiosity. Okay. Wouldn't it be great to be able to tell your kids the truth about who you were and who you are? Yep. Rather than have to just make up stuff or deny stuff. The position that I don't know if the decisions that you make right now in the decisions that you make right now are going to have you in a certain position in life in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years. And the decisions that you're making right now, therefore, are going to decide what conditions your children are born into in 5 years, in 10 years, in 20 years, whenever that happens. So if you're making decisions right now that are causing your life to kind of nosedive, understand that you're bringing children into the world in a state of nosediving. And I wonder how many of us, if you really, really, really love your children, would say, this is where I want my children to be born. Wouldn't it be better to make the proper decisions so that when your children are born into the world, they're born in the best possible situation, so you can give them the best possible opportunities? What that therefore means is that right now, if you raised your hand and you want to have children someday, you need to quit being so goddamn selfish. Stop living for yourself. Because when you have children, you're going to have to give up yourself, a big part of yourself. Just like being and we might think like, yeah, but that's later on. I want to have fun now. Yeah, but we all pay for what we do. You can have fun now, and then the fun that you have now is going to, or you can do things right and bring your children into an even better position than you want to have, than you could have had in life. Because if you've raised your hand, then you're not living for just yourself. You're living for children who haven't been born yet. But they're going to be there. They exist somewhere up here in the ether. But that's a hard thing for us to conceptualize because that's in some future tense that we can't really conceptualize. We can conceptualize right now and the fun we want to have right now. And by the way, the fun that you have right now very well might bring about those children that you weren't expecting for 10 years. I know who you are.
Until prom.
Yeah, exactly, till prom. And so, even then, you can still be in a better position. So far, so good? Okay. So now, wouldn't it be better also to be able to tell your children that the person you are? That's why I encourage you guys to keep these journals, man. When the school year is over, take them with you, put them in a box somewhere, and keep them. And then someday, when you guys have children who are in high school, and your kids and you're chastising your kids because they got a bad grade, pull that journal out, dust off, and say, "When I was your age, I want you to be better than I was." And isn't that all of our hopes? That we want better for our children than we had. But understand that the struggles you're going through are also making you a better person, a stronger person. And it's strange that we want our children to be better off than us, and to not have to struggle with the things that we struggle with, but we're removing the very mechanisms that made us strong and good in the first place. By removing those struggles from their life, I don't know that we're making them better people. I don't know. I mean, I told my last period, I can tell you guys all day long about how to be the perfect parent. If you guys have a question about being a perfect parent, just let me know. I can tell you how to be a perfect parent. Anybody know why I can tell you? Because I don't have kids. So I'm an expert in kids because I don't have to actually live with the consequences of those decisions in the first place. But this is the one that strikes me, because finding a meaning and finding a purpose, and by the way, your purpose can be a big purpose, the meaning of life, which I can tell you. Or little purposes. What's your purpose for being in this class? What's your purpose for skateboarding? What's your purpose for playing a musical instrument? What's your purpose for going to the party? And whatever your purposes are, you're probably going to fulfill if you actually pursue those purposes, if you conceptualize them. So maybe it's a matter of orienting your purposes in a way that actually improves your life, if that makes sense. So now, but again, this is the one that strikes me. Because this is the kind of thing, this is the self-reflection. Most of us can find a good meaning, but this is the most personal of all. Meaning it isn't just that you live, it's how you live. It isn't just that you die. Everybody dies. It's how you die. This is the how to the meaning. And so now if you can figure out how best to live. And again, that's something that you can determine for yourself. But the problem, like I said, is that when we violate this thing so often, and if I asked you guys, how many times today have you violated the things that you know to be right and the things that you know to be wrong? I mean, I'm walking down the hallway. I probably violated it twice just walking down the hallway here today. I don't know. But this is a hard thing. And This is why when people ask, like, what's the value of philosophy? The value of philosophy is that I do without being commanded by the law, but most people only do if the law makes them do it. In other words, philosophy is a way of strengthening your conscience. You try not to. At least you become aware of these things, hopefully. But this is the thing. It's like if you had to tell your kids the truth about who you are. If you had to tell your parents the truth. If you had to admit to yourself the truth of who you are. It's the damn Germans again. German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche. He has this idea of he calls the eternal recurrence. And the eternal recurrence means this. Imagine you died today, and a demon came to you, or an angel. I guess it would depend on how you answer this question, whether it's a demon or an angel. And that being said to you, from now until all of eternity, what you're going to do is watch your life on repeat. Every action you did, everything you didn't do, everything you said, every thought you had. And from now until all of eternity, you're going to have to watch your life on recurrence, like this. That's why I'm saying it's either a demon or an angel. I don't know. And this is the thing that's probably going to strike you the most. How did you live? What did you do? I wonder if you got to the end of the first run and you watched it, and you saw every action, every thought, everything that you did, every interaction with people, even that homeless person you walked past, or that mean thing you said to a friend who was just trying to be nice, or the sweet thing you did for the stranger, or the proper action you did when you thought nobody was watching. I wonder how many of us would get to the end of that life and say to that demon or angel, that was my life? Again, let's watch it again. And you get to a second time and go, that was my life. Watch it again. Let's watch it again. Or how many of you would sit there at the end and go, no, not again. And then the demon, of course, in this case, saying, open your eyes. Let's watch it again. Let's watch it again. And if we approach life like this every day and just ask myself, but I want to watch myself doing this on eternal recurrence for all of eternity. Or make it more practical. But I want to tell my children someday that I did this. Or what would my parents think if they saw me doing this? Or better yet, if I had to face myself after doing this, would I want to do this? Because that's the God that appears when the other God disappears. The courage to be, the courage to exist in these ways is rooted in the God who appears, the you who appears when the other one disappears. And there's nobody around watching you. If you only had to face yourself, who's the you that appears? What's that value judgment that appears? Because this takes a lot of courage to face every day. It's hard. This one, we can ignore it. It's going to happen, maybe. Keep our eyes closed to it. This one, you've got to find, because this is the thing that keeps you going. But this is the thing that defines you. This isn't what people say about you. This is what you are. And what you are takes courage to be, to exist. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Thursday.